What is going on, guys? So yesterday, as you all know, we had our grease gun come out in our Tides of War mission. I gotta do a review video with this new really beast gun, in my opinion. Definitely gonna be a favorite, I think, for the medic class. We also had a chance to check out the unique feature for this new gun, being the suppressor. However, as you guys all know, I kind of screwed that part up, so I wanted to redo that section today just for having good information on this channel, as we'll talk a little bit about what this suppressor actually does. Then I want to talk about DICE cleaning up these gun stats and being a bit more comprehensive about them. I know some of you might say it's not that big of a deal, and I do agree the TTK and team balancing are much bigger issues for DICE to be focusing on, but I'd also want them to continue polishing things up even when things are going smoothly. So let's jump in and talk about this suppressor situation. When I first originally thought it was broken, I actually did jump on Part Welch's Twitter, our community manager, because usually he will do a quick post letting us know if there's an issue in the game and letting us all know that DICE is aware of the problem. They actually do a very good job about notifying us. But this time, though, I didn't see a post show up, so that did kind of have me confused. I should have just checked his tweet replies because it was all right there. But what I learned, thanks to you guys pointing out politely to me, is the grease gun suppressor is working. It's just DICE decided to go down, in Part Welch's words, the route of authenticity versus Hollywood. So that is kind of interesting. We'll talk more about that stuff here in a second. He went on to tell us that the weapon's audio changes with your environment and is different depending on the perspective that you have and your relative position to a suppressed, non-suppressed M3 being fired. So basically, the closer you are to the gun, the louder it's going to sound. Hence why when I was using it, I was like, why is this thing still so loud? Part Welch actually gave us an audio clip showing how there is a subtle difference between the first person perspective of having the suppressor on to it not being on. So as you guys can hear and even see with the audio clip right there, that there's a subtle difference, and I'm sure there's even more of a difference from someone who's further away, as Part Welch pointed out in his post. He said, play around some more with it in third-person perspective, take a friend into community games and spectator mode, in different audio environments, inside bunkers, outside in the open, in echoey hallways, etc., and you hear more variance in the work that the audio team here at DICE have done. So it looks like DICE's audio team is still bringing it in Battlefield 5. There's a lot of attention to detail being done here. However, then Part Welch drops a V1 rocket on me, at least, or more what you guys point out to me, that the suppressor will not show hit markers when you hit someone, giving the enemy player no directional awareness of where he's taking damage from. So that's really interesting, and even more interesting that Part Welch finished up his post letting us know that the Commando Carbine has had this feature since it first came out, something that personally I was completely unaware of. So yeah, those are the facts. I'm sure most of you know this already, but thanks for bearing with me if you're still here. But yeah, let's talk about all this, because this is actually kind of interesting. It appears that DICE has probably been watching many of these videos that are out there that are titled like how video games get suppressors wrong and the misconceptions of them. So to me, it makes sense DICE would want to get around to this. I think initially hearing this, I personally would have wished DICE lowered the first person perspective sound a bit more, but after thinking about it a little bit, I get it. It actually kind of makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate it. If there's one area in Battlefield games I appreciate going more and more realistic, that would be how the guns perform. So to me, this is actually pretty cool what they've done here. But what I don't appreciate is the vagueness. Like, all they put on the description is reduces the noise from firing the weapon. Like, really, DICE? If not for us, at least put a better description for your audio team who busted ass, I'm sure, to bring out some quality content, and all you're going to do is say reduces the noise from firing the weapon. Like, that is kind of bad. And that's just describing the sound, which again has a lot of attention to detail here. There's not even a mention to the directional hit markers not showing up, and this has been there since the Commando Carbine. This now suddenly makes a whole lot of sense why I could post up in some sneaky spots with the Commando Carbine when it first came out, and I would kind of wonder why the enemies would just continue running behind cover, not even bothering once to look in the direction their damage indicator was pointing them to. I kid you not, it almost had me at times looking at my Commando Carbine like the guy in our Grease Gun trailer when he was stunned after he takes out a tank and a plane, except I was more stunned at how I could put 5 shots into a guy with his best response was to go prone out in the open. So this all, of course, had me just shrugging it off once I kind of thought that, well, maybe the suppressor and the sound is what's causing this, and maybe he's not looking at his directional arrows and he's just listening in to where the bullets are coming from. Now, this is not the only time DICE has been kind of vague with these descriptions. There's a lot of these specialization stats out there that do things like make your bullets travel 10% faster or increase your reload time for your gun, but there's no information in game that tells you what your muzzle velocity is or what your gun's stock reload time is. Instead, you have to jump onto third-party sites and such to find this information, and I know some people out there might say that's not that big of a deal to go do, and I would have deferred until just recently with how poor this suppressor description was, and finding out that there's something in the game that causes your directional hit marker to not show up. Like, I didn't even know that that was even there to discuss whether it to be OP or not. So personally, like I said at the very beginning, this isn't on the top of the list, and I know there's probably a lot of us out there that have a very long list of things for DICE to get to, but I would prefer more details for our weapons. Next to maps, guns are on the top of the list of features in the game, in my opinion, so as much information as possible I would like to have there readily available for us. Put things like reload times on there, put the muzzle velocity, put the damage drop off for the guns, and when it comes to things like descriptions that don't do it justice, make one of those videos that they do for the different gadgets and have it there for players to see. That would have been great for this situation where the suppressor specialization could have a quick 30-second video letting people hear the different gun sound perspectives. It just doesn't make sense to me to do all that attention to detail and then not let your community know the attention of detail you've done. And I mean, I get it too. There's a lot of detailed things in Battlefield 5 that you don't want DICE just telling you right off the bat. You want to discover it for yourself because that's part of the fun. But I do think there's a difference between discovering and knowing about a secret reload for your weapon that doesn't affect the gameplay at all than knowing my gun doesn't leave hit markers on enemy players. One is pure aesthetics, the other affects your actual gameplay. So in my opinion, I would prefer to know much about the gameplay as possible, and that includes the sound for the suppressor. I do think that plays a role because that's what I initially was thinking about when I equipped the suppressor was, is this going to affect the sound or not, and why isn't it? And yeah, it was just causing so much confusion in my opinion. But that's about it for me ranting on how DICE could do this stuff better. They did quality work on the suppressor in my opinion. I would just like to not jump through hoops to have to find out about this stuff. But what do you guys think? I always like to hear you guys' feedback down below. There's a lot of discussion going on about this stuff in my last video, so we'll see if you guys have more to say about this topic as I did. But that is it for you guys today. Again, I always appreciate you guys being here. I am Living, and I'll catch you guys again later.